AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane.
Sora 2 comes out, but in the same week, we also have an open source VO3 or Sora 2 competitor. This is a video model with audio natively built in. This AI can generate videos with transparency. We have another AI that can create real-time 3D heads. The best open source image generator was also dropped this week. It has a really good world understanding. We have a real-time video generator which you can prompt to edit further and it can apply the change in real time. We also have a new real-time text-to-speech generator. This is also open source and you can run this with most consumer-grade GPUs. We have some new updates from Nanobanana, GLM, and DeepSeek. Plus, Anthropic releases their latest and best model, Claude 4.5, and a lot more. So let's jump right in. First up, we have another super useful model from Alibaba Wan. Now, last week they released Wan 2.5, which is like a VO3 or Sora 2 competitor. This can basically generate video with audio natively built in. Well, this week they released something different. It's called Wan Alpha, and this basically allows you to generate videos with transparency. So here are some of their examples. The prompt is over here, and here's what it generates, and notice that the background is transparent, so you can easily add this video as a layer on top of another existing background. Notice that even for translucent stuff like bubbles, it's able to handle the transparency very well. And then here are some more examples for your reference. Even with this really complex leaf foliage in the background, it's able to accurately segment this and generate the background as transparent. And then here's another example of a glowing flame. For things like this, you kind of need to generate the transparency gradually. It's not a hard edge. And as you can see from this alpha channel, it's able to do this very well. Here's another example of a boy drinking from this bottle, and it's able to handle the bottle's translucency very accurately. And then here's an example of hair, which is so annoying to segment, but it's able to handle this hair very well. Here are some other tricky items for your reference. Here's a glowing flame again, and then here is a glass cup, and also with some really annoying hair over here and over here, but it's able to segment everything very well. Here are some even trickier objects for your reference. So here is a translucent flower which has dynamic light reflections and glow, but it's able to handle, the translucency of this very well. Same with this glowing halo. Again, to generate an alpha channel for this glow, it's not just a hard edge, but a gradual edge. And as you can see, it's able to do this very well. And then here are some other tricky examples for your reference. The awesome thing is, as before, they've released everything already, so the models are all on Hugging Face. Plus, if you click on their GitHub, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Anyways, all the links are at the top here, so I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further and check out more examples. Next up, we have a new text-to-speech model. It's called Kani TTS, and the awesome thing about this is you can even run this in real time. So here it says it only takes 1 second to generate 15 seconds of audio with an RTX 5080, and you only need around 2 gigabytes of VRAM. So this offers super low latency, which means you can basically generate speech in real time. I'll go more into the details of its architecture and specs in a second, but here are some quick demos. So here's the transcript, and it can kind of understand context and tricky words like this.
Anyway, tell me all about her. I mean, what's she like? Is she really, pretty?
No, that does not make you a failure. No. Sweetie, no. It just means that you're having a tough time.
Got it. $300,000. I can definitely help you get a very good price for your property by selecting a realtor.
I am such an idiot sometimes. I'm so sorry. I don't know where my head's at.
And the awesome thing is they've also released a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out online. So here is where you can select the speaker. There are multiple predefined speakers, plus there are also different languages you can choose from. Let's just try Andrew, and then let's give it a tricky sentence like this. Here are some additional advanced settings you can play around with, but I'm just going to leave everything at the default and then click run. Alright, here's what we get.
The record producer refused to record the band's new single. The wind was too strong to wind the kite string.
And it got these words correct. Or let's paste in a tongue twister, and then for the voice, let's select an Irish Jenny voice and hear what that sounds like.
She sells seashells by the seashore, but the shells she sells aren't cheap.
Not much of an Irish accent there, but it could pronounce the words correctly. Here's an Arabic voice with an Arabic example. Let's play this.
ومنها أيضا الدعم المتقدم للأرشفة حيث يقدم الموقع المواد في خزم متكاملة.
Let me know in the comments below if this is correct. Or here's a Korean example.
하얀 눈 위에 빨간 점만 나가 아침을 엽서처럼 만든다.
So here are the specs. This model is actually super tiny, and that's why it's able to basically run in real time. It's only 370 million parameters, whereas some text-to-speech generators are over 1 billion parameters. And then it can support all these languages, plus it's under the Apache 2 license, which has very minimal restrictions. You can even use this for commercial purposes. And then really quickly, here's how they designed it. It first uses their own language model as a backbone to basically convert your transcript into these audio tokens. And then afterwards, it uses NVIDIA's audio codec called Nano codec, which basically turns these tokens into smooth, natural sounding audio. And if you click on their GitHub, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. All the links and demos are on this main page, so if you're interested, I'll link to this in the description below for you to read further. In other news, this AI is pretty cool. It's called Cap4D, and I featured this tool a few weeks ago. This can basically create a real-time 4D avatar. In other words, it's a 3D face that can move over time, which is the fourth dimension. You just need to upload multiple images of a person at different angles, and then it can basically construct a real-time 4D avatar, which you can control and move around. And this is different from other avatar generators I've featured before on my channel, like Live Portrait or Hello, which is only 2D. For this one, it's real-time, plus the model is actually 3D, so you can actually rotate the head around as you control the face expressions. You can choose to upload only one photo or multiple photos, and if you use multiple photos, then of course the model is going to be even more accurate. Now, I already featured this before, so I'm not going to repeat too much here, but basically this week they finally released the code for you to use. So if you click on this GitHub repo, it now contains all the instructions on how to download and operate these 4D avatars. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In other news, we have a slight upgrade to Gemini 2.5 Flash or Nanobanana. So before you couldn't really control the aspect ratio, but now you can finally do so. They now offer these 10 aspect ratios, which you can set for your output photos. So let me just show you this really quickly. You can use this for free in Google's AI Studio. Simply select try Nanobanana over here, or you can also choose Nanobanana over here. Now, once you select that, notice that here, they've added this new aspect ratio feature, where you can select from all these different aspect ratios. So for example, I'm gonna upload this horizontal image, and then let's make her wear a red dress in a blizzard. Now, instead of this original horizontal image, what I'm going to do is set the aspect ratio to something like vertical, and then let's press run and see if this works. Perfect. So as you can see, we are now also able to control the aspect ratio of your output image. In other news, we have another top open source image generator. This time it's by Tencent Hunyuan, and they finally released HunyuanImage 3.0. This is incredibly powerful. This has built-in world understanding, much like GPT's image generator, as well as Google's Imagine and Qwen image. Here are some examples. You can generate a 9-square grid tutorial on how to sketch a parrot, and here's what you get. Or here's an illustration showing the evolution from monkeys to humans, and then the final humans sitting in front of a computer. It's also really good at aesthetics, as you can see here. This looks much more realistic and unrefined compared to, previous generations of image models like Flux, which kind of look too plasticky and perfect. Here are some other examples for your reference. It's also great at generating text, as you can see here. I especially like this one because it's super complicated. Each letter has to be rendered using a different material, including all of these materials. But as you can see, it was able to pull it off very well. And because of its world understanding, this is really good at generating long snippets of text in the image. So here's one example. It's also great at generating infographics or diagrams or PowerPoint slides like this. Here's another example. Now, here are some benchmark scores for your reference. So on the left is its performance using English prompts, and on the right is using Chinese prompts. And they're comparing this with Seedream, Nanobanana, and GPT-Image. Note that all three of these are closed source and paid. But for HunyuanImage 3, although for English prompts, it does fall short for some categories, overall, its performance is actually very similar to the top closed source models out there. Now, if you use Chinese prompts instead, then it's actually a lot better for some of these benchmarks, as you can see, like for this one. Here are some other metrics for your reference. So here they got more than 100 professional evaluators, whatever that means, to compare the generations of all four models and select a winner. And here it seems like HunyuanImage actually got the highest win rate. Alright, so how do you use this? Well, first of all, you can try this out for free using their online interface. So simply click try it now, which will take you to this page. You might need to sign up for free first before you can use this interface. But afterwards, here is where you would select HunyuanImage 3.0. Here is where you would enter your prompt and select the aspect ratio and the number of images. Notice that HunyuanImage currently can only do text to image, so it can't do image to image or image editing where you would upload some reference images for it to edit like Nanobanana. Here are some really quick but challenging tests that I tried out with HunyuanImage. First of all, I got it to create a Pokemon card for Neo Charizard. It's basically a Charizard with a cyberpunk vibe, and here are the specs. And it got most of the details correct, such as the HP, the move, which should be Neo Flame, which costs 4 fire energies, plus it does 120 damage, so it got everything that I specified. However, down here, it does generate some gibberish, so if I don't specify the details, then it's just going to give me something like this. But overall, the design is pretty cool. Next, because they claim it's so good at world understanding, I wanted to see if it actually knows some popular anime characters. So here we have Naruto, Nezuko, Goku, Doraemon, Amelia, and Satoru Gojo taking a selfie together. And it actually nailed this. I guess one flaw is that Amelia's outfit plus Nezuko's outfit isn't really correct, but other than that, I mean, this photo looks really good, and the anime characters are all accurate. Like, even Naruto's leaf logo is accurate. Alright, here's an even trickier prompt, which I did not expect it to get 100% correct, so here's a presentation slide with the following text plus the data broken down into these percentages. So it got the title, subtitle, and the source correct, as you can see over here and down here, but it couldn't really turn this into a nice looking pie chart. So it got like most of the details correct, it got the legend correct, but this isn't really in like clockwise order, so it should be like 55 and then 19.7 and then 10.4, 6.2, etc. So the order of this pie chart is all messed up for some reason, and then there are some extra labels over here. So basically the pie chart isn't really correct. However, the text here is correct. So I guess it can do simple presentation slides, but if you feed it a ton of data that it needs to display into graphs and charts, then it starts to fail. Alright, here's another tricky test. A 3x3 grid of student life memes featuring the following themes: all-nighter studying, exam panic, etc, etc. You can pause this video to read this prompt if you want, but basically here is what we get. And for the most part, it's really good. It's actually able to generate everything that I specified in this 3x3 grid. Now there are subtle flaws with this. For example, the text behind over here is gibberish. Plus this guy's eyes are messed up, and it looks like the same guy's eyes are also messed up in this generation. The poor guy turned into a zombie or something. But other than that, I mean, it did get the overall details correct. And then here I told it to give me 2 panels side by side with the title Spot the Difference with subtle differences between the 2 images, and it executed this very well. It indeed introduced some subtle differences between both images. Now here's another even trickier prompt, which is a hand making a shadow which looks like a rabbit, and it wasn't really able to do that. Like, this does not look realistic, so it's not that good yet. Now that being said, these are super challenging prompts that most other image models do not get correct. So I'm really trying to test its limits. For basic images like this, HunyuanImage 3 does a fantastic job, and it's just as good as the leading models out there. Now, in addition to the online interface, the awesome thing is they have open sourced this, so you could download this and run it locally, but before you get too excited, here's the thing. You need at least 170 gigabytes to store the models, plus in terms of GPU VRAM, you need at least 3 times 80 gigabytes, in other words, 240 gigabytes of VRAM in order to run this. I mean, who the hell has 240 gigabytes lying in their bedroom? Even an RTX 6000 Pro only has 96 gigabytes. So I'm sure for most of you, including myself, you're not going to be able to download and run this locally on your computer. And that's why, even though this came out this week, I didn't really do a full tutorial because nobody could actually use this locally yet. However, the Tencent team is aware of this limitation and they are working hard to create a more quantized or compressed version that can actually run on consumer grade GPUs. So stay tuned for that. For now, like I showed you, you can try this out for free using their online interface. And if you're interested in reading the specs further, I'll link to this main announcement page in the description below. Next up, this AI is really cool. It's called LongLive by NVIDIA, and this can generate real-time interactive videos. In other words, from just a prompt, it can basically generate a video in real time, and you can inject prompts further to edit the video as it plays. So here's an example of this in action. Notice here we can enter prompts to direct the scene further. And the latency is actually super low, so it was able to generate the edit really quickly. Here are some other examples for your reference. As you can see, the model is able to generate all of these edits seamlessly in the video. Now, the quality of this video model isn't great compared to the leading video models out there. We do get a lot of noise and traditional flaws like warped faces and fingers, but I mean, hey, this is a real-time video generator, so it's expected that the quality isn't as good as, the leading video models out there. Anyways, there are a ton of examples on this page. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of these. I'll link to this page afterwards where you can check out all these demos if you want, but here's its upper limit. Apparently, LongLive can generate videos of up to 4 minutes long, which is quite a significant achievement. Really quickly, if you're interested in the architecture, LongLive uses a technique called streaming long tuning, which basically involves breaking the video generation process into smaller chunks and then reusing previously generated frames to improve the efficiency and consistency of the video. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've already released a GitHub repo, which if you scroll down a bit, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. Notice that this is 1.3 billion parameters, as this is based off of the 1.3 billion parameter model of Wan 2.1. Here it says they've tested this with an NVIDIA GPU with 40 gigabytes of memory and 64 gigabytes of RAM, but other hardware setups could also work. Honestly, the Wan 1.3 billion parameter model is pretty tiny, so it can run on consumer grade GPUs, but you might not be able to achieve real-time generation with lower VRAM. Here it says it supports almost 21 frames per second generation on a single H100 GPU and 24.8 frames per second with the quantized version with marginal quality loss. Anyways, all the links are up here, so if you're interested in reading further or checking out more demos, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Let me tell you about this awesome tool called ChatLLM by Abacus AI, the sponsor of this video. ChatLLM is an all-in-one platform for you to use the best AI models out there. You can seamlessly switch between different models, plus you can use the best image generators out there and the best video generators out there all in one integrated platform. Plus, if you're coding something, they have a really useful artifacts feature so that you can preview your generation side by side. Plus, they have a deep agent feature which can do really complex tasks all autonomously, like creating PowerPoints, websites, and research reports. It's gonna supercharge your productivity. You can access all these AI models and image and video generators and Deep Agent for only $10 a month. This is way cheaper than if you paid for each tool separately. Definitely check out ChatLLM that comes with Deep Agent in the description below. In other news, as you probably know, Sora 2 dropped this week. Now, I already did a full review on it where I tested its video generation capabilities, so see this video if you haven't already. However, in the past few days after using Sora, my perception of it has really changed from being just a video generator to becoming more of a social media platform, or a video meme generator. You see, while Sora 2 might not be the best video model out there in terms of physics and anatomy, but the real strength of Sora is you can prompt it to generate any scene of basically any fictional character out there. It actually knows their appearance and even voice, so you can mix and match and generate some really crazy videos with multiple characters or in multiple styles. So for example, here are some of the top videos that have been blowing up.
Justin, keep your hands on the wheel! You almost wiped out 3 cars back there! Put it in park, now!
I'm sorry, officer, I just...
Don't move, door's locked, unlock it, right now!
I can't get a ticket again.
Hey, stop the car!
Pikachu on the grill here. It's already got a beautiful char and it smells like somebody plugged in a chicken. Let's give it a flip. I'm gonna carve it into some thick steaks. Look at that. Crust on the outside, pink and juicy in the middle. Cheers. Shockingly.
Hey, it's me, out here in the woods, and look who I ran into. This is the most beautiful creature, right? Whoa! Oh my gosh, okay, he's leaving, I'm alright. Whew!
Man, that's so cool. Everything is free. Okay, I'm taking these.
Wait, damn it up. Bring those back.
Whoa, gotta go.
Stop, give them back.
Nope, too late.
Hey, come back here.
Free art, baby.
Justin, keep your hands on the wheel. You almost wiped out 3 cars back there. Put it in park, now.
I'm sorry, officer, I just...
Don't move, latch is locked, open it, right now. Stop the car.
He's still southbound, weaving through traffic, 88 miles an hour.
Out of the way, mamma mia!
Our live over Interstate 75 where that red go-kart driven by the man known as Super Mario is still running from troopers. He's in the center lane right now, weaving between...
Woohoo! Look at that speed, my friends! The copies are getting smaller like a Goomba back there! Chat, you seeing this? 99, 100 miles, mamma mia!
Anyways, if you want to learn more about Sora 2, definitely see my full review video over here. Now, in addition to Sora 2, we kind of already have an open source version of Sora 2 or VO3 that was released this week. It's called Ovi by Character AI, and this can basically generate video with audio natively built in. So here are some examples.
Ovi generates people who think they're real.
Ovi predicted this. Word for word.
Everyone here was created by Ovi. My therapist uses Ovi to predict my breakdowns. It's concerningly accurate.
Ovi predict this conversation. I'm scared.
Ovi generated my mom. She's disappointed.
It is the age of Ovi. I will never let that happen.
Ovi broke causality. Effects precede causes.
This love feels so real.
I know we are not AI anymore.
The awesome thing about this is you can use text only, or you can also do image to video. In other words, you can upload a reference image to use as the start frame, which even Sora 2 cannot do if it involves realistic people. And this is the first open source video generator with audio built in. For closed source models, currently we have Sora 2 and VO3 and also Wan 2.5, but this one is actually open source, so you can download it and run it locally right now. Anyways, here are some additional examples of Ovi's generations. First of all, note that here is how you would format the prompt. If you want to get her to speak something out, you would simply wrap her dialogue with this start and end tag. And then you can also specify what the voice should sound like plus what the background noise should sound like using these odd cap tags.
Enjoy this moment, no matter where it's taking.
Or here's another example of a podcast. Here is what this guy should say, and then here is what the voice and the overall audio should sound like.
Is talent. It's all about authenticity. You got to be who you really are, especially if you're working.
This can even handle multiple speakers, which sometimes even Sora 2 and VO3 have a hard time doing. So here, for example, the woman first says this, and then the man smirks and then says this.
You always give me extra foam.
That's how I bribe loyal customers.
And this also works with different languages and expressions, as you can see here.
No puedo olvidar aquella noche. La recuerdo todo.
Or here's a Korean example.
제가 과거에 과장님께 뭔가
It can even do singing like this.
Come with you. I just love.
It seems like it has like some music generation capabilities built in, which is pretty cool. The awesome thing is if you scroll up to the top of the page, it's already out. So if you click on this GitHub repo and you scroll down a bit, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. And the awesome thing is here it says the minimum GPU requirement is only 32 gigabytes. And this is just the full model. I'm sure the open source community is gonna quantize or compress this even further so that it can run on lower VRAM. So at least for me, I'm waiting for a more quantized version plus a comfy UI or Want2GP integration. Once that's out, I'll definitely do a full tutorial on this. Anyways, all the links are up here, so if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is really impressive. It's called OmniRetarget, and this can basically teach robots how to move and do complex tasks by copying human movements. So it basically uses motion capture data from humans as input. So the human can do various actions like jumping, moving boxes, or even doing flips and parkour, and basically this model is able to map the human motion onto the robot. And then of course we need to also fine-tune it further and apply some reinforcement learning so that the robot can remain balanced and stable while doing the action. But afterwards you get some incredible results. For example, here is a robot jumping off this table and then rolling. Look how incredibly acrobatic this is. And then here are some examples of the robot climbing up this table. Its movements are so natural and human-like. And then instead of just climbing, the robot can actually jump up and then rotate in midair and then sit on the table like this. How crazy is that? It can also do some crawling like this, as well as stepping over this box. And of course, they also trained it on a ton of different ways to carry boxes, as you can see here. Notice that it's doing all of this autonomously. This is not teleoperated. And it learned how to do all of this just from some motion capture data of humans doing it. The really cool thing is that it can learn movements and tasks that are up to 30 seconds, which is what you're seeing over here. This is quite a complex and long sequence of tasks. It has to first put the chair near the table and then step on the chair to get on top of the table. And then afterwards, it proceeds to jump down the table and even do a flip. The awesome thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've actually released a dataset for this, which you can potentially use to train your own humanoid robots. In addition, here it says the code is coming soon, so it looks like they are planning to open source this, which is fantastic. For now, if you're interested in reading further or viewing more demos, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, ZAI releases their latest model, GLM 4.6. Now, GLM had already been one of my favorite open source models to use. It's especially good at agentic performance and coding, and it's even as good as some of the closed proprietary models out there. This week, they released a newer version, and here are some noticeable updates. They increased the context window from 128K to 200K. This is basically like how much information you can fit into your prompt at once. It also demonstrates superior coding performance, so it achieves higher scores on coding benchmarks, which I'll show you in a second. Plus, it's also better at advanced reasoning and agentic capabilities. And it also writes better, so it aligns with human preferences in style and readability, and it also performs more naturally in role-playing scenarios. So if you're a developer and you're creating, I don't know, some companion chat app, then this is one of the best open source options to use. Anyways, here are some really impressive benchmarks for your reference. Here they compared this latest GLM 4.6 in blue with DeepSeek 3.2 experimental, which I'll talk about in a second, as well as Claude Sonnet 4.5, which they just released this week, which I'll also talk about in a second. But as you can see, across most of these benchmarks, GLM 4.6 performed even better, including AIME, which is like competitive math, GPQA, which is graduate level science questions, Humanities Last Exam, which tests the models on some really obscure scientific knowledge, as well as some coding and agentic benchmarks. Here they are comparing GLM 4.6 with other models, and as you can see, GLM 4.6 actually has a higher win rate compared to all these models. and it's also insanely efficient. So here you can see it uses the least amount of tokens when executing tasks. The awesome thing is you can try this out for free right now. It's just z.ai, and this is a chat interface much like ChatGPT. So at the top here is where you can select the latest GLM 4.6 model. And let's test this out. For my first prompt, let's try to get it to create a color palette generator that extracts colors from uploaded images and suggests harmonies and export schemes. Let's press generate. All right, here's what we get. So here's the HTML code, which we can expand and preview on this right side window. So let me upload an image. Let's try this one. And then here I can set the colors to extract. Let's just leave it at 5 and then click extract colors. And here's the color palette. And then down here are the color harmonies. Here's a complementary harmony. Here's analogous, triadic, etc., etc. I can even export this palette in all these different formats. How awesome is that? You know, this is the thing I like about GLM 4.6. It just works right out of the box. Or here's another example. Let's get it to create a beautiful CRM dashboard that offers real-time insights into sales, customer engagement, etc., etc. Include interactive charts and graphs such as funnel visualizations, pie charts for lead sources, and heat maps, etc., etc. Let's click generate. Alright, so for some reason it decided to answer me in Chinese. ZAI is a Chinese startup, so that's interesting. But if you click on this HTML page, here is our dashboard. Let me just expand this, and this looks beautiful. Notice that these cards are updating in real time. We have a very beautiful funnel and some other charts. This pie chart looks very responsive and accurate. This heat map also looks very beautiful. Plus, we have the performance of all the sales reps over here. We have the latest activities over here and over here. And you know, the cool thing about this is you can click on any card and drag this around and reposition them. So here's another example. Let me try to reposition this, and here's what we get. Or let me try to reposition this. How cool is that? Everything just works. Let's also test its ability to do some research. So I'm going to get it to analyze e-commerce growth in Asia from 2020 to 2025. This time, let's turn on web search so it can actually search the web and fetch the latest and most accurate information. And then let's click generate and see what that gives us. All right, here's what we get. So here's an executive summary with key metrics and key findings. Here is the annual transaction volume from 2020 up to 2025, quarterly transaction trends, market penetration analysis. Unfortunately, this is not correct. It doesn't seem like it can generate a map and then highlight, each country. And then we get this regional analysis section, key growth drivers, and then here's a future outlook and key trends to watch. Overall, this is not bad. I would say it's not as thorough or detailed as some deep research tools like Gemini Deep Research or GenSpark or Skywork, but those are like deep research agents, right? Just from a base LLM, this is actually pretty good already. All right, those are just some quick tests. And the awesome thing is, like the previous GLM models, they've already released this for you to download and run locally. So on this Hugging Face page, notice that this is a 335 billion parameter mixture of experts model. So think of it as like a team of agents working together. And when you use it, only 32 billion parameters are active. So it's quite efficient. Now, if you scroll down here, notice that they haven't added GLM 4.6 yet, but just from the GLM 4.5 model, even for the FP8 version, it still requires like 8 H100s or 4 H200s to run this, at least according to this GitHub repo. So you're probably not going to be able to run this with like local hardware, but you can always rent some GPU cloud. And then down here is where they give you instructions on how to actually install and run this. Anyways, all the links are up here, so if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main announcement page in the description below. Here's a really cool and quick update. If you've been doing AI video generation locally on your computer, you're probably using something like Wan 2.2 or 2.1, and you might have heard of this additional plugin called LightX2V, which basically helps accelerate your video generation by up to 20 times. This is essentially a LoRa which you can add to your workflow, and once you add this LoRa, instead of setting the step count to 20 or 30 steps to generate a video, you can just reduce this to 4 steps. Now this week, they've just released a new Wan 2.2 Lightning LoRa, and this is a significant improvement compared to the previous version, as you can see from some of these examples. As you can see, version 1.1 is kind of generating the video in slow motion, plus some of the movements and physics are not really correct. However, this latest version on the bottom is just way more realistic and natural, plus the movements are way faster, and the physics are also more correct. So if you're using Wan 2.2 locally, definitely give this a shot. I think it's the best accelerator LoRa or plugin you can use right now. So if you click on this link, it takes you over here. In fact, I'll link to this in the description below. And basically you can download these LoRas and add it to your Wan 2.2 workflow. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You would add this LoRa to the high noise section and this one to the low noise section. By the way, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, definitely see this video to get started with local AI video generation. Here's where I show you exactly how to set up and use Wan 2.2 offline on your computer. Anyways, they kind of low-key released it. This latest version is kind of hidden in this Hugging Face folder. So I'll link to this page in the description below where you can download these directly. Next up, Anthropic releases Claude Sonnet 4.5 this week. This is their latest and best model yet, and here they even claim that it's the best coding model in the world, which is kind of aggressive. I wouldn't say it's the best coding model in the world, as you'll see in a second. But anyways, here they claim that it shows substantial gains in terms of reasoning, math, coding, and agentic capabilities. The really interesting thing is that Claude 4.5 is able to focus for more than 30 hours to solve complex multi-step tasks. And if you look at this SWE-bench verified benchmark, which is the benchmark that they are very heavily focused on, then you can see 4.5 is currently the leading model for this benchmark, even beating GPT-5 and GPT-5 codecs. However, this chart is kind of misleading. You need to read the fine print. So here, these additional margins are with parallel test time compute. So what exactly does that even mean? Down here in the footnotes, they explain that this is basically generating multiple parallel attempts and then using an internal scoring model to select the best candidate. And only then does this result in a score of 82% for Sonnet 4.5. So, I mean, of course, if you run this for a ton of times and then you select the winner, then of course it's going to be better. However, they didn't really do this for the competitor models, so it's kind of misleading. Now, it's important to know that Anthropic is very much focused on this SWE-bench verified benchmark. However, if you look at some other benchmarks, actually Claude 4.5 does not perform so well. So here's another one called Terminal Bench Hard, which also tests its ability on agentic coding and terminal use. Claude 4.5 Sonnet actually falls behind Grok 4 and GPT-5 codecs. Same with this one, Claude 4.5 is not the best. And then for science, Claude actually kind of sucks. So Humanities Last Exam and GPQ-8 Diamond, Claude 4.5 Sonnet is all the way down here, even below Gemini 2.5 Pro, which was released like months ago. Same with like Live Code Bench, Instruction Following, and Competitive Math. Claude 4.5 Sonnet isn't actually that good. Now, when I read that this is the quote-unquote best coding model in the world, of course I had to try it out on some coding examples. So here I'm using ChatLLM by Abacus AI, quick plug to them. You can basically use all the models out there, including Claude Sonnet 4.5, in just one integrated platform. And then over here, let's get it to develop a real-time ray tracing simulation of a metallic sphere suspended above a street scene. Use any publicly available 3D street view and allow adjustable parameters such as reflectivity, roughness, etc. So this is really testing its understanding of lighting and physics. Let's turn on thinking mode and also let's turn on code. So it will actually generate some code and allow us to preview this in a side window. Let's press generate. All right, here's what we get. Now, yes, I can move around the scene with my mouse, and yes, the zoom in and out works. However, it did not import a real 3D street view map. Now let's adjust roughness to 0, and then for metalness, let's drag this to 0 and then to 1. Seems like that works. For roughness, let's also drag this to 1 and then to 0, so that works. Reflectivity, let's drag this to 0. It doesn't seem like reflectivity does anything. And then sphere height, that works. Sphere size, that also works. Base color, let's select red, that also works. Let's turn this to white. And then environment intensity, okay, that does do something. I'm not sure if this is physically correct, but there you go. Now here's the same prompt with GPT-5, which was released a few months ago, and as you can see, GPT-5's generation is just a lot better. The sphere looks way more realistic, plus it actually used an existing 3D map. Or here's another tricky prompt. Make a visual simulation of a beehive construction showing hexagonal cells forming worker bee paths and honey storage. Again, I'm going to turn on think and code and then press generate. All right, here's what I got. And as you can see, this does not actually look accurate. The hexagonal cells, first of all, are not positioned properly, plus they're not actually forming new edges. It should start from just like a few hexagonal cells and then expand outwards. And then the bees aren't even leaving the hive. I don't know what they're doing, but they should be going out and foraging for flowers. So everything here is just not correct. And then for your reference, again, here is GPT-5's generation, and it just looks way better. At least it understands, how a hive should look like and how it should expand over time, plus the bees are actually going out to forage, and you can even see the cells filling up with honey. So again, I'm not too impressed by Claude Sonnet 4.5. Alright, here's another tricky example. Create an animation of fluid dynamics, include interactivity and sliders with multiple color dyes. Let's press generate. Okay, here's what we get. Now, if I click on this, it does something. It doesn't really look like liquid. Let's decrease the diffusion maybe, and then increase the force strength. Okay, let's increase the viscosity, or maybe decrease the viscosity. It just doesn't look like I'm mixing fluids. So again, that's a fail. This doesn't seem to be an accurate visualization. Whereas again, if you compare this with GPT-5 using the same prompt, it just executed this way better. So those were just some quick tests using Claude Sonnet 4.5. As you can see, I'm not too impressed by this. This might be the best coding model only according to this Webench verified benchmark, but if you actually try to use this, it tends to fail at a ton of things. At least in terms of closed source proprietary models for coding, I would still personally prefer Grok 4 or GPT-5. But anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main announcement page in the description below. Also this week, DeepSeek releases yet another new model. This time it's called 3.2 Experimental. Like the name implies, this is just an experimental version, and this actually builds upon version 3.1 Terminus, which I went over last week. This is currently the leading open source model out there. It's actually really good. They refined this further by introducing this method called DeepSeek Sparse Attention. This is basically a mechanism that improves training and inference efficiency. So as you can see here, the cost for version 3.2 has dropped significantly compared to 3.1 Terminus. So this makes it way more efficient, especially for long context scenarios. Now notice that this version 3.2 is mostly optimized for efficiency and not performance, so I wouldn't say it's like significantly better than version 3.1. In fact, if you compare some of these benchmark scores, for some of them, version 3.2 does do better, like competitive math and code forces, as well as some of these agentic benchmarks. But then for other things, like scientific knowledge, it doesn't perform as well. So I would say in terms of performance, it's kind of on par with version 3.1 Terminus, but it's just way more efficient. In fact, if you look at this independent leaderboard by Artificial Analysis and you only select open source models, notice that here, DeepSeek version 3.1 Terminus is tied for first place with a score of 58. And then version 3.2 actually performs 1 point worse, so it's tied for second place with Qwen 3. However, notice how much cheaper this is compared to DeepSeek 3.1 Terminus. Now, like before, they've released everything already on Hugging Face, and down here it contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is huge. It's called Dreamer 4, and this is quite complicated to wrap your head around, so let me explain this for you in simple terms. This is an agent that trains itself on how to play Minecraft. Now, instead of actually playing Minecraft, which of course takes a lot of time and trial and error, you basically just show it a ton of videos of Minecraft gameplay. And then afterwards, it can train itself by just imagining itself playing Minecraft, but without actually playing Minecraft. So that's why it's called Dreamer 4. It basically reconstructs its own world model, or basically its own simulation of Minecraft after watching all these gameplay videos. And then within this own simulation, it practices playing the game for tons and tons of sessions, trying thousands of actions and seeing what works and what doesn't. For example, to gather wood, it would chop trees over and over in its own simulation. Note that for these demos, none of them are real. None of them are actually using a real Minecraft game. This is all its own simulation. And as you can see, it's practicing this again and again until it gets the reward. In other words, until it successfully gathers wood. Here's another example where it practices digging or mining stones again and again inside its own simulation. Now, here's the crazy part. It's also the first agent to successfully mine diamonds in Minecraft. Now, this is a notoriously difficult task that requires a sequence of over 20,000 mouse and keyboard actions in order to actually successfully mine a diamond, but it's first able to train itself, or basically rehearse, doing this action in its simulation, as you can see here. So if I fast forward this to the end, you can see that it has successfully mined a diamond. And then when you deploy this to an actual Minecraft game, it was actually able to achieve this. And if you compare this with other Minecraft agents, notice that none of them were able to actually successfully mine a diamond. But for Dreamer 4, it was actually able to achieve this. Now, the success rate isn't high. It was only able to do this like 0.7% of the time, but nevertheless, it's the first agent to achieve this, and this is really impressive. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, why should we care? What's the point of getting an AI to imagine itself playing Minecraft? Well, that's just the start. If you deploy this agent in the real world, like into robots for example, here's why this is so huge. Instead of actually physically training a robot to do really complex tasks that require thousands of steps, which would of course take a lot of time and resources, you could just get this AI model to imagine itself doing the task in its own simulation to train itself. So that when you actually deploy this to the real world, the robot would already know how to do these complex tasks. So Minecraft is just the start. The end goal is to really apply this to training robots in real life. Now, unfortunately for now, they've only released a technical paper. There doesn't seem to be any GitHub or anything for you to inspect the code or download this. But if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.